DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency. We all know who they are. Federal government, branch of the federal government, enforcing branch of the federal government that goes out and arrests and prosecutes or brings to prosecution bad guys that have to do with drugs, big drug dealers. Okay. That being said, they have an interesting history going back to the early mid 20s when they were called something else, mid 30s. And I have extensive criticisms of that history and some of the things that they have done over the last 20, 30, 40 years. That being said, it's a big agency. They do many things. And they actually have a public campaign to educate and warn on drug and substance abuse. And as much as I am absolutely not a fan of slogans because they dumb things down and put it for mass consumption, and often they're used in the wrong way. And we have seen it even in the area of drugs and substance abuse. You know, Nancy Reagan, this is your brain on drugs. But they got a cool little slogan, which is one pill can kill. Okay. And one pill can kill. I think you're trying to refer to the potency of fentanyl. Okay. And manufactured illicit pills. Okay. That are put into the drug supply, the illicit drug supply. And they are not monitored and regulated and can be very deadly given the small amount of fentanyl that it takes for somebody to overdose. Okay, fine. I like this. And in this, we can kind of look at their, just a brief look at their website, see what kind of stuff they have. You know, and they got this little thing where so people can spot a pill that is manufactured versus authentic. They have some basic information about, I guess, how potent fentanyl is. They have resources, information for teens, parents, and caregivers, for teachers, naloxone, which I really like. And some of this stuff is a little childish, but for the most part, I love their effort and I like at least what they're trying to do. And they have a social media resources and partners toolbox. In that endeavor, in that attempt to reach out to the public, to educate, I suppose they're trying to make partnerships seem a little less scary to people. They also put out these flyers, these posters, which was brought to my attention by some folks that were partly in local law enforcement, partly in mental health and the court system. Doesn't matter. They brought these to my attention. And that's what we want to discuss, deadly emojis. And here they are. Start off with this one, okay? And we'll go through it real quick, and then I'll give you my thoughts and commentary on it. Okay, we can go through this real quick, and then I'll give you my commentary on it, which is something no one else is talking about, and you should hear this because it's very important and what is not addressed in these posters. Emoji drug decoded, Drug Enforcement Agency, and basically it talks about what emojis are. Okay, they're meant to represent emotions, events, activities, and we use them in this shorthand, bizarre language in today's world of communication with text messaging and rapid discussions online. And they point out to you that, look, criminal organizations, drug dealers, drug traffickers also use emojis, and they can use these emojis to advertise and communicate about drugs. Okay, that's the simplest way to state it. They used within that subculture or that ecosystem of drug dealing and drug use, emojis can be used in a watered down language where people communicate about drugs, okay? Whether it's drug dealing or selling. For example, what's probably most pertinent to most of us is, you know, whatever your son, your daughter, your loved one is buying a bag of heroin or cocaine, and there's some text going on with some other individual out there in the World Wide Web, and they're communicating about the type of drug that is being bought, how much it's going to go for, where they're going to meet, and so on. And they may be using emojis as coded messages. Okay. Um, and I want to point something out here. They say in this thing, emojis on their own should not be indicative of legal activity, okay, but coupled with a change in behavior, change in appearance, or significant loss, increase in income should be a reason to start an important conversation, okay? I want you to note that. Number one, and says, we understand initiating those conversations can be difficult, so we have resources available at DEA.gov, one pill. So they first give a disclaimer. Emojis by themselves don't mean something significant is going on. Then they go and give us a lesson. And I don't want to criticize them about, those coupled with, basically they're saying put the emoji in the context of the situation that your loved one is in. Now it's time to start a difficult conversation. Okay. Um, okay. Now, here are some of the emojis, which I think that is important to show you guys. And I am sure these change over time. Nevertheless, give you some sort of an idea. Oxycodone, right? There are some things, and you can find this on the internet. And we will put a link to this in the description below, as well as the DEA website for One Pill Can Kill campaign, if you're so interested. Here's some emojis for oxycodone, okay? And they have Xanax. Okay, there's a school bus. Percocet, pill, something blue, plus blues, P. And then Adderall, again, the capsule. Other emojis for drugs. There's cocaine, and there's a snowflake or a snow crystal. So again, weather that has to do with snow, snowman, ice, diamond, 8-ball, whatever, meth. Okay, here's one for heroin, the dragon, marijuana. These itself would be an interesting study, and someone could get a graduate thesis in the cultural use of emojis to communicate drugs and what they mean in context. Marijuana, MDMA, dextrometasone or cough syrup, whatever. And then here's drug dealers advertising, high potency, little rocket flying, shrooms, universal for drug, large batch. Okay, there's one. And here's another common emoji sheet. Again, these could be changing in time. They might be geographically limited or have their own geographic identities in certain areas. Nevertheless, just to get an idea. And this sheet is at least, I don't know, 6 months to a year old, could be longer. Dealer signs and so forth. Okay, so that is the message. They have the public outreach kind of a campaign, public outreach campaign. One Pill Can Kill. That's the slogan. That's the website. On that website, there are resources for parents, for teachers, for community leaders, talking about starting conversations, educating about the drug supply, discussing the overdose deaths. Great. Those are all good things. And as part of that, they also put out this sort of 1 or 2 sheet fact sheet and pointing out that, look, there are emojis that communicate the language of drugs in that ecosystem, okay? And you should know this because your loved one may be using these symbols in their communication with someone out there in the internet space. Fantastic. Here's one problem with it, okay? The idea, I suppose, and let's just use an example. The idea, I suppose, is my child, right? They're potentially using this fact sheet of emojis. I can figure out in context with all of the other factors that they try to explain to you that could be a sign that there is engagement in that drug subcultural world. They point out the difficulty in that situation because now you got to start a difficult conversation. I think there's another difficulty here. And again, it has to be put in context who is the loved one. But I'm going to even say it's my child. Number one, how old is my child to have a phone? And let's say they're 8 or 9 or 10 years old, very young, okay? And for whatever reason, I've given them the opportunity to have the phone for certain reasons. Even in that case, so much so if they're 15, 16, or 17, even in that case, and I'm paying for the phone, and I'm paying for the roof over their head, and I'm paying for their schooling, and I'm paying for every single part of their life, and they're under my control. Do I have the right to pick up that phone, which I paid for, without their knowledge and look at their private conversations? Is there any kind of psychosocial boundary? So much for physical. Could be physical if you grab it out of their hand, I guess. In that world of boundaries that should be developed in the developing individual from early on, from healthy objects around you, parents, parental figures, as they develop that individual, they are meant, it is supposed to be not to control them, but take care of them and bring up healthy individuation and separation. This is very important to understand. And this conversation completely misses that. In that individuation and separation, I'm also supposed to teach, live, and respect appropriate boundaries, emotional, psychological, physical. Now, even if it's not my child and it's my significant other, it's the same thing. Two healthy people should have certain boundaries. Let me recapture that again. Here's the DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency. They have this public service campaign, public message education, facilitation, coordination, and sort of like not being so intimidating. And we don't just arrest people. And it's a pretty cool campaign, okay? And it even has a decent slogan, okay? One pill can kill. And they try to educate through this campaign. There's a website. Part of that campaign is an education piece about emojis that are representative of some illicit drug interaction going on, whether it's drug dealing, but oftentimes in our case, someone selling our kids drugs or our loved ones drugs. Okay, they point out that, you know what, you gotta interpret the emojis in context. It's not just an emoji means drugs, it could be anything. But if you have all of these other things surrounding the person, the loved one you're concerned about, and the emojis, it may be time to start that difficult conversation. We know that's a difficult conversation, so we want to help you out. And then they have some resources on that website that help you out. Okay, I want to say, well, the issue is not starting the difficult conversation, maybe, but even before that, there's another issue. If you're talking about your children, there is potentially a boundary being crossed if I pick up their phone and look at the emojis or the conversations they're having without their permission or knowledge. Even if I pay for the phone, I paid for their food, I put a roof over their head, I paid for their schooling, I paid for their extracurricular activities, and breaking up boundaries, whether it's emotional, psychological, physical, okay, that kind of thing can be indicative of some major issues because the parental figures those objects in your life, as they raise you, the job is not to control you, and the job is not to indefinitely take care of you. The greatest sacrifice as a caretaker is to be able to raise someone so they individuate in a healthy way and have all their boundaries and confidence to go into the world and separate. And part of that healthy development is appropriate boundaries that they need to be taught. Now, if I go break that boundary without any thought, I invite you to take a closer look at yourself, what you've passed on to the kid, and how it came to be to a situation where you have the concerns that you may have. And that's the underlying message I have for you as the DEA. And I'm not blaming them, puts this out so you can be able to tell and help you be able to tell if there is any substance use, misuse, stealing, abuse going on with a loved one. My suggestion, I usually don't give suggestions, and I oftentimes point out these issues and problems. If you are in that situation, if you're able to are in a situation where you can freely look at the phone, which, I think that's even unhealthy if a family has created that situation. By the way, this goes a lot into family enmeshment. I've made a video about that, and you can go check it out, Enmeshed Families. So if you can freely look at the phone, go ahead. But if this is something you want to be sensitive about, ask the child or the loved one permission, maybe, okay? Or utilize other avenues to bring up the discussion, that difficult discussion that the DEA points out. I think my biggest lesson that I'm trying to convey to you is if you're in a situation with a loved one that you feel comfortable just looking at the phone, there might be a problem that is global that the person may have contributed to that individual loved one coming up the way they did and having certain problems now. Two, take a closer look at yourself and the dynamics within the family or you and the loved one. And three, be open and honest about it when approaching that person, because that itself could be the very first steps to recovery for that person and maybe the entire family, the unit, the community, the structures that have been raised as pillars that may not be so healthy. I want to thank the DEA for putting this out. It's a valiant effort, good job. And everyone else, I hope you can utilize this. Go to their website. It's One Pill Can Kill. And I will have the links below in my description. See you guys next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Peace.